Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
What if the serpent was an evil? Ethiopian texts challenge the Garden of Eden narrative completely. In the highlands of East Africa, where ancient churches are carved into stone and sacred chants still echo through monasteries older than most empires, lies a history largely forgotten by the Western world. It is a history that speaks of divine secrets and cosmic wars, of angels who fell and kings who ruled before the rise of Babylon. It is also a history that claims something deeply unsettling. The Antichrist has already come, and it challenges the foundation of what many believe about good and evil, heaven and hell, God and the devil. In Ethiopia, religion is not just a matter of belief, it is memory. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church preserves scriptures, traditions, and prophecies that were long lost, edited out, or labeled apocryphal by Western canon. Among these ancient writings is a version of the Book of Revelation called the Metshaf Ketis, and other texts like the Kebra Nagast, the Book of Enoch, and oral prophecies passed down through the Zagwe and Solomonic dynasties. Together, they construct a version of Christian history that is both familiar and profoundly different. To understand how Ethiopia sees the Antichrist, not as a figure to come in the future, but as a spirit already at work in the present, we must go back not just to Revelation, but to the beginning of humanity itself, specifically to the Garden of Eden. According to Ethiopian interpretations of early Genesis narratives, influenced by apocryphal works like the Book of Jubilees and 1st Enoch, the serpent who tempted Eve was not merely a devil in disguise. He was perhaps a messenger of forbidden knowledge, knowledge that, while dangerous, may not have been entirely evil. Unlike the Western portrayal where the serpent is equated directly with Satan, some Ethiopian traditions suggest the serpent was a being who offered humanity a path to consciousness, one that Yahweh wished to delay. In this reading, the serpent did not lie when it said eating the fruit would open the eyes of Adam and Eve. And God himself confirms this in Genesis 3 verse 22. Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. The serpent, then, becomes less of a villain and more of a catalyst. Some Ethiopian mystics view this not as original sin, but as original awakening. Humanity stepped into divine awareness, and in doing so, also stepped into a spiritual battlefield that continues to this day. This brings us to the Antichrist. In the West, he's often imagined as a charismatic global leader who will rise in the end times, deceive the nations, and declare himself God. But in the Ethiopian prophecies, especially those tied to the revelation of Ezra, the apocalypse of Peter, and prophetic oral traditions tied to the Ark of the Covenant, the Antichrist is not a single man, but a system. He is a spirit that entered the world long ago, disguised as empire, technology, and false religion. He rides on corruption and deception, promising peace but sowing chaos. He wears the clothes of democracy, but serves mammon. He preaches freedom, but chains the soul. Ethiopia's scriptures describe the Antichrist as one who looks like the Messiah, but speaks like a dragon. This phrase, drawn from the Ethiopian Book of Revelation, has often been interpreted as a warning against colonial Christianity. That is, a form of the gospel weaponized to justify slavery, conquest, and the destruction of indigenous spiritual systems, including those in Africa. When European empires arrived in Africa bearing the cross in one hand and the sword in the other, Ethiopian monks and scribes wrote that the beast from the sea had come again. These colonial powers, claiming to spread the gospel, often operated in direct contradiction to Christ's teachings. And to many Ethiopians, this was not a mistake. It was a prophecy fulfilled. In fact, some Ethiopian saints believed that the Antichrist was born the moment the true teachings of the Messiah were altered for political gain. They traced this corruption back to the Romanization of Christianity under Constantine, where councils removed books such as Enoch, Jubilees, and the Testament of Solomon. In doing so, they argue, Western Christianity severed itself from its prophetic and African roots. The Ethiopian canon, by contrast, preserved these texts that speak openly about fallen angels, hybrid giants, cosmic rebellions, and a coming war between the righteous and the deceived. But perhaps the most shocking element in this narrative is the idea that the Antichrist doesn't come from outside the church, but from within it. The Kebra Nagast implies that false shepherds will arise from among the believers, distorting the gospel and leading many astray. These leaders will worship power, elevate their own nations as divine, and persecute those who speak the truth. The Antichrist is not waiting to take over the world. He already has. He is in the systems we worship, in the screens we bow to, in the economies we call free, in the food we eat, the news we consume, the wars we ignore. The Ethiopian revelation says he rules now, and most do not see him because they are already under his spell. In these apocalyptic visions, the final war is not one of bombs and armies, but of consciousness. The children of light will awaken, not through weapons, but through revelation. The knowledge once guarded by the serpent, forbidden by priests, and hidden in monasteries carved in stone, will return. People will question the edited Bibles of the West. They will seek the books that were removed. They will realize that ancient Ethiopia did not simply adopt Christianity. It preserved a version of it that stretches back to Enoch, to Melchizedek, to the watchers who fell before Noah's flood. In this war, truth is the sword. In Ethiopia, the ancient land of Cush, is the library of that truth. It is no coincidence that Ethiopia claims to guard the Ark of the Covenant, the holiest artifact of Old Testament history. Nor is it coincidence that the Ethiopian calendar is years ahead of the Gregorian one. In their time, the end has already begun. In their prophecies, the beast has already devoured much of the world, and yet the world continues to dance in its belly unaware. And what of the serpent? Some Ethiopian mystics say that the serpent and the Antichrist are not the same. One offers knowledge, the other offers control. One made man divine, the other makes man a slave. This inversion of symbols is central to the Ethiopian worldview, that much of what the modern world calls good is actually evil, and what it rejects as heresy may hold the keys to salvation. In the end, Ethiopia's lost revelations are not just about religion. They are about who controls history, who edits scripture, who names the villain, and who names the god. In a world where the serpent is evil by default, and empire is good by tradition, the Ethiopian texts force us to ask, what if we've been deceived not by the serpent, but by the scribe?